again, I'm Ted Vu, and I'm with Tasty. And yeah, so I guess you have some questions for me today, huh?
Yeah, so part of our "How I Did It" series is, having conversations with successful business owners like yourself, and just to share their story with the world, and hopefully provide some insight and inspiration to future business owners, entrepreneurs that are, of Vietnamese heritage, so that they can also grow their business. So, without further ado. Obviously, Ted Vu from Tasty, but where are you originally from? Where did you grow up?
So I grew up in Garden Grove, actually. So I lived in Garden Grove. I was born in Montclair, lived in Garden Grove until second grade, moved down South County for a little while, and then the big recession happened. My parents lost their house. So we ended up back in Garden Grove, and I've been in Garden Grove ever since.
Okay,
That was
so
probably like from sixth grade up until now.
okay, and what motivated you to pursue your current business right now?
Okay, so I feel like ever since I was a little kid, I always had a knack for business. So I always found a way to sell some kind of service or product, regardless of what it was. But how I stumbled upon Tasty was, I mean, what's funny about it is, I mean, I worked in food service before Tasty, right? I worked at Mrs. Fields Cookies. I worked at Lamppost Pizza. And I remember Lamppost Pizza was the last food service job I had. And I told myself, like, I'm never going into food service again, right? Because it's so hard. It's very hard. People don't realize how much work it takes to work in food service, especially in the front lines or even in the kitchen. It takes a toll on you, right? And I just told myself, I'm never going to do it. And then fast forward a couple of years later, like this is while we were in college, Boba started making its way to the United States, right, to LA, and it was kind of creeping down to Orange County. And my friend took me to a place, and I was like, "Hey, like, what is this? Like, why are people standing in line for like it was like long queues, like super long lines? I didn't understand why people were waiting for it." And I tried the product, and it was good, but then I saw an opportunity, and just kind of like just my mind, just being business oriented, always looking for opportunities. I saw an opportunity, especially growing up in America, but like being Vietnamese, right? So I saw an opportunity where I saw this really Asian product because at the time it was mostly just in the Asian community, right? So I was like, hey, I see an opportunity here to mix the two flavors, of the American flavors and like the Asian flavors. And remember back then, this was a product that was coming from Taiwan. It wasn't generally like a Vietnamese thing. So the Vietnamese community wasn't. There weren't that many Vietnamese flavors, and as part of it, right? So I was thinking, like let's mix all these flavors together, and let's not just make it about the drinks. We got to make it about the experience, right? Because like the
Mhm.
American culture, you've got like a lot of that experience part of it. It's not just about getting the drink and just like leaving, right?
Mhm.
So I wanted to bring the product, the creativity with the drinks and the different combination of flavors, but with the customer experience to it. And that's where
Mhm.
the like the ring, like the idea and the inspiration came from that. And we just started running with that idea.
So, as you grew your business, what were some of the challenges that you faced along the way while in this business?
I think any business owner will tell you the main challenge is always going to be the people, right? The people, what I mean by the people is just the employees, right? Find the right people to work for you, to represent your brand. That has always been the number one challenge, right? So I think for us, especially, like when you have one location, it's not as big of an issue because when you create a company, right? The company has its own identity, it has its own culture, right? And a lot of times, the personalities of the owners are like embedded into the culture of the company, right? So when you're first starting off, you have one location. It's very easy to maintain that culture because you're in it every day. You're there all the time, right? So whoever is working, like you're touching them on a daily basis. It's when you try to scale the business that becomes more difficult to maintain that culture, maintain that connection. And like I think we made some mistakes in the past, trusting the wrong people, right? And then feeling like I could step away and kind of just like focus on other things, right? And those mistakes came back to bite us. And how that happened was like when the wrong people are in charge, the culture starts changing, right? And if you trust somebody too much and you don't verify and you don't stay connected, not just with them, but you got to stay connected to the other people that work below that person, right? From the front lines all the way to the top. If you don't stay connected, then the company kind of loses its way, right? So we had to pull back and kind of like regroup and then just bring that culture back. And that meant us being a lot more involved than we were before. So, like that's I think that's a big challenge I think most businesses are going to have to face.
Yeah. So can you elaborate a little bit more about, obviously the challenge was personnel and bringing on the right people. What did you learn about going through that process, and how have you guys gotten better about bringing the right people on?
So, something that there's three things there's three principles or values that I really think are very important, right? That's like compassion, integrity, and loyalty, right? Those are
Mhm.
kind of the three main things that I look for the people that are like that I'm working with. So what we learned is we can't just be in our corporate office and make decisions and just let it trickle down. We have to be out the stores too.
Hmm.
So that's why we, like for a while, like the research and development of creating new drinks, a lot of times we would do it at our corporate office because we set up a kitchen at our corporate office. But we found that when we did that, that created more separation from us and the
Mhm.
stores, right?
Mhm.
So when we learned that we need to have a stronger connection with the store, we decided like we're not going to use that R&D kitchen that we have at corporate anymore. We're going to go to the stores. We're going to do the R&D at the stores. So when we're at the stores, the team sees us. We get a chance to talk to them, be more connected with them, and also they get to see the new drinks that we're kind of coming up with. And it's a lot of fun because then they get to taste it. They get to make their own suggestions and share their own ideas, right? And that creates a stronger connection with the team. And while we're doing that, we kind of remember certain people we run into that kind of share like that we have kind of like it's kind of like an energy you kind of feel from people, right? And you get their you understand you get to know their names, and then you bring it up to like the meetings that we have. Because now, I mean, like before, for a while, we would have a meeting maybe every once or 2 months. But now, to make sure we stay connected, we have meetings with all of our store managers at least once a month. And on top of that, we have meetings with our, we call them our multi-unit managers. We have meetings with them every single week to go through like customer reviews, go through operational challenges, right? And when we have these meetings, we bring up certain names that kind of like come up like through our interactions at the store, and just talking to them and finding out hey, like this is an idea we have, right? This is a problem that we have. This is a possible solution. What do you guys foresee? Like, what will be the problem if we did this at the stores, right? What are the challenges, right? And then like let's give this a try. Let's test this out at one store and see how it goes. Let's get their feedback after 2 weeks, and then we can make minor adjustments, right? Now, before we didn't do that. Before we were like, hey, this is a great idea. Okay, all the stores starting on this date, we're gonna like implement this change. When we implemented this new way of just taking our time, I think the team felt more heard. They felt like understood, right? And then we also learned that hey, even though like you can come up with the best idea, if it's a challenge for them to do it at the store, they're not gonna even do it.
Mhm.
So it's
Mhm.
like there's all that wasted energy when you can keep them as part of the process. And when you keep them as part of the process, it's a lot more successful.
Yeah. So obviously, you've had lots of success and achievements throughout your business experience. What are some of the ones that you're kind of most proud of, uh, uh, given how long you've been in business?
And I always say this. Number one thing that I'm most proud of is I created something that not only my family is, like I made a living for myself and my family, but most importantly, I'm creating this for other people also, right? So we have team members that work at our stores. They start off, so a lot of times it's their first job, right? And they build themselves up to supervisor, and then they build themselves to assistant manager, store manager, and then if they want to take it even further, they go and work for us at corporate, right? And they start climbing the ladder at corporate, and now they've got a long, lifelong career where they can feed their families too, right? So
Mhm.
for me, that is the number one most rewarding, most thing that I'm most proud of that. And I'll tell you right now, like Tasty has grown to a point where if I wanted to, I could just not open up any more stores, and I would be happy. I would be set. But the reason why we still continue to expand is because of the employees, right? We've got
Mhm.
people who depend on us. We want to provide more opportunity because right now our corporate office we have a small team,
Mhm.
but we've got a lot of stores with everybody who wants opportunity, and we want to create that opportunity for them.
Are you do you take some inspiration from the In-N-Out model where their store managers are only promoted from within?
Okay, so we definitely that is our number one goal, 100%. That is our number one priority because, like I said, right, like I was talking about being connected with the team and having a strong connection and that company culture. Those are things you can. It takes a long time to build that company culture, and it takes time to
Mhm.
get somebody to kind of like live and breathe that company culture.
Mhm.
And the best way to do that is homegrown, right?
Mhm.
You plant the seeds and you nurture the plant, and then the plant grows and becomes, it bears fruit. So
Mhm.
there are times when we do have to go outside of the company, and that's when nobody, if there's a strong need and we don't have anybody readily available, then we'll go outside. But I would say 99% of the time we look from within.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
So how do you
that goes with the corporate office too, not
Mm,
just
mm,
the stores.
Doris. So how do you as one of the business owners there, how do you balance your work life and your personal life?
Okay, so for sure, I value my family time very much. So I do carve out a time and days and the weekends. It's like carved out for them,
Mhm.
right? And I think family values is very important, especially just being, like very strong in the Vietnamese culture, right? It's like
Mhm.
having a strong bond with your family.
Mhm.
And I have a very strong bond with my parents and my family as well. So like even with my busy schedule with Tasty and with my own direct, like my own family and my kids' activities, I still find the time to see my parents and talk to my parents every single week, at least once a
Mhm.
week,
Mhm.
right? And I think having that bond with them and having that like constant connection with them, it really like it helps ground me, right? And it kind of reminds me of that, like the Vietnamese culture of just how we view our elders, right? I think, especially in the Vietnamese community, it's a very strong core part of our
Mhm.
upbringing. And that I think that has helped me kind of always carve out time for the family. So, like for me, I always think there's always going to be work, no matter what. There's always going to be things to do, right? But there's only so much time I have left with my parents. There's only so much time that I have while my kids are young, right? I mean,
Mhm.
like I was
Mhm.
just carrying my kids as babies not too long ago. They're like, I have a 13-year-old right now and a 10-year-old, right? And they're having their minds of their own and all this stuff. Like each
Mhm.
phase is so important, and I don't want to miss out on it.
Mhm.
So, I mean, people always ask me, how do I switch it off? It's just something that I do. Like I'm in the present. So wherever I'm
Mhm.
at, I'm present. And I'll catch
Mhm.
myself kind of like thinking about work or things like that, but I always pull myself out and just, hey, I'm here with my family right now, and that's what I'm doing.
Yeah. You know, we talked a little bit about the Vietnamese heritage, staying close to your parents. Are there any other ways that you stay connected to the Vietnamese culture or heritage in your business or personal life?
I don't think there's any like activity that I can pinpoint because
Hmm.
it's so ingrained in you, right?
Hmm.
Right, like I know, just living in Garden Grove in general, like you're gonna be more connected with the Vietnamese community, but
Hmm.
I can't tell you if there's certain any activity other than just being really having that really close relationship with my parents.
Hmm.
I think that's just the strongest factor for me. And just
Yeah.
I did visit Vietnam a few years back. I think that visit changed me a lot. Like
Hmm.
I mean, I've traveled to many other countries before, but just going back to your home country and kind of like seeing the streets where my parents grew up, and like they showed
Hmm.
me the restaurant where they got married, and like felt this really deep connection with the country, and I felt so happy to be there. And to this
Hmm.
day, that trip to Vietnam is number one by far the best vacation I ever had in my life.
Mm. What are some of the values or principles that guide you in both your work and your daily life?
Okay, so I kind of mentioned it before, right? I
Mm.
mentioned it earlier with integrity, compassion, and loyalty.
Mm.
I think those things are something that I value in my personal life and business.
Hmm.
So to kind of expand on that a little bit more, and that's I kind of like I'll start off with compassion. And I
Hmm.
think that's kind of one of the key reasons why Tasty has been successful is because from day one, for me, like I know I'm considered the boss at work. But I don't view myself as that, right? I look at my team and I see them as, hey, everybody wants to be happy, right? There's nobody in this
Hmm.
world that doesn't want to be happy.
Hmm.
So for
Hmm.
me, I always think about them, right? I think about what it's not just about work. Like I ask them, how are you doing, right? I actually do
Hmm.
care about what they have going on in their personal life,
Hmm.
and
Hmm.
they see that. They see when I put in the work and I put in the connection with them. They see that I have that compassion. And a lot of times, like throughout the time, I mean, I've been doing this for 22 years.
Hmm.
A lot of times, the employees actually come to me to kind of talk about their problems, and it's not just
Hmm.
work problems. They'll come to me, ask for like financial advice or
Hmm.
like any important decisions they have because they know that I actually care and I actually listen, right?
Hmm.
And so that compassion is really important. And it's not even trying because I say try, but it's not really because it's like it's already part of me, right?
Hmm.
Integrity is another really important thing because that's really how do you act when nobody's looking,
Hmm.
right? Like
Hmm.
for me, especially like an employee, right? I can deal with mistakes. I can deal with you messing up 2 or 3 times, but if you don't own up to it and you make up excuses, or you kind of put it on somebody else, or you're just quiet and don't say anything, right?
Hmm.
That tells a lot more to me. So that means
Hmm.
you have no integrity. You have no place here, right? If you
Hmm.
have that integrity, you have that compassion, right? Then that's where the third value that I have, that's loyalty, then I'll have my loyalty to you. So even if things get bad or you have a string of bad decisions, I'm going to remain loyal to you because you have integrity, because you have compassion. Because those things have to be kind of, it's like you can nurture it, but you can't really teach somebody who doesn't have it,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
So for
Yeah.
me, I think our success, we luckily, maybe it's luck, maybe we nurtured it, but from the start to now, we've always had key people in place that had those qualities to kind of help us succeed.
What are some of the goals and or aspirations that you have for the future?
The goals and aspirations at this point is I want to go as far as we can take this, right,
Hmm.
and provide the best opportunities we can for our team. I want Tasty to go mainstream. Right now it's starting to. I think the last 2 3 years it's starting to go a lot more mainstream. But still, you'll still find majority of all boba tea shops, including us, are all in Asian communities,
Hmm.
right? I see this. I want to see this go widespread. I want this to be
Hmm.
all over the place. Like I'd love to have one in Idaho someday, right? So,
Yeah.
so like that
Yeah.
for me is the dream, and for us to get there, it's gonna take a lot of work. I've learned that.
Hmm.
And you kind of asked me earlier, like how do I stay kind of like that work life balance,
Hmm.
right? And I'm okay with opening 5 stores this year instead of 10.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to rush it. I don't have to open up 20
Mm-hmm.
stores because, like, I'm okay with slow, steady growth because when you go too fast, you're just going to start making mistakes. And I think another thing I'm really proud of, you asked me, like, what am I really proud of is, as part of starting Tasty. And obviously the number one was just creating opportunity for the team, but also like creating Tasty virtually debt free. So we've cash flowed everything.
Mm-hmm.
So an important thing that I want to give advice to a lot of people in business is as you grow and you start building some decent cash flow, it's very easy to start taking it to increase your lifestyle, right? But for me, I live within my means, and
Mm-hmm.
then we reinvest into Tasty. So for many years, I saw a lot of family and friends like excelling beyond me, just visually, right? You see what cars everybody drives, what houses
Mm-hmm.
they buy, and it's kind of like, oh man, like I want those things. But instead of doing those things, I reinvested in the company and we built it up. I mean, we virtually with no debt. And my parents, I don't come from money. My parents, like we were not rich at all. So we bootstrapped Tasty from the start. Like I took credit card debt, I took a loan out against my car, and like I think that's something to be proud of.
Hey, the final question is, what advice would you give to other Vietnamese diaspora who want to follow in your footsteps?
I think like well, kind of it's just kind of like a summary of what I said before, right? Like that that part of Vietnamese culture that's ingrained in us, right? It's kind of like that that close knit family and just helping each other and just being there for the people who work for you. It's almost like because like your mom have guests over and you're just like she always wants to make sure they're fed, right? Always want to make sure they're
Mm-hmm.
taken care of. It's like that that nurturing, that caring for other people, right? If
Mm-hmm.
you express that to your employees who are working for you, then whatever goal it is that you have, whatever goal you have, whatever aspiration you have, it becomes theirs too, right?
Mm-hmm.
They become kind of like your own spokespeople. Like they'll go out there and kind of push the same thing you are because this person cares for me. It's
Mm-hmm.
like it's nothing new. It's like it's already ingrained in us. It's just a lot of times we get confused with what we want and we forget about what other people want too.
Hey, thank you, Ted Vu with Tasty, for hanging out with us so much, for sharing about your story, and hope it provides an inspiration to all those that hear it.
Yeah, cool. Thank you, Dan.